Welcome back to Whiskey Wednesdays, everybody. It's me, maybe your favorite host, maybe not, Chris Dempsey out of Dallas, Maurice Brooks out of San Francisco, and the sweet, awesome, most amazing Mary Kelly out of DC. Hello, everybody.
So first and foremost, I just want to say it's really cool how I think that like me and Chris have this weird internal hosting going because neither one of our intros of one another are they're like taking small little like jabs at one another, and then when Mary comes in, it's like, oh, and the sweet, the kindest of all.
She balances us out.
The apple of the orchard. Yeah, seriously, Mary, without you here, this show would be like cat dog. It'd be literally like cat dog.
That's awesome. So we are going to have Lisa Wicker here with us this afternoon. She is just running a little bit late. So while we're waiting on her to kind of come through, we'll be just kind of hanging out and talking about our favorite whiskeys and what is going on this month or next month, what we got coming up.
Yeah, sounds good. What we're going to be talking with Lisa from Widow Jane. So what are you most looking forward to of the special releases for the holidays?
I mean, me, myself, because I literally, this is all I have of the first vaults, like, and I know I will not be getting another one. So, like, me, myself, I am excited for the second edition. Also, too, Lucky 13. I have yet to see it, try it, smell it, or any of those things. So those would have to be the two things that I'm looking forward to the most, and then hopefully maybe getting a chance to see everyone at the distillery. But those would have to be the most, three, four. I can't count.
What about you, Mary?
I think, I'm really curious to see how the second version of the vaults is going to come out. They're unique, although they're really, really awesome. Kind of a collector's moment, almost like a birthday bourbon. So I do have a full bottle left in storage. I hide because Kevin would drink it when while I was out at the market or something. But I'm excited about that, and I'm excited to see what heirloom stuff is coming out of Widow Jane.
Yummy. Me too, man. Definitely the vaults. I have like maybe an ounce left of the last one, and Andrea drank most of it. So I was like, oh, I'll just go put this over here so I can have an ounce later at some point. That definitely, man. I feel like everything that comes out like that is just, it gets coveted very quickly, and that makes me kind of proud to be a part of something like that and to know you guys.
Well, thank you that we're a part of that. I mean, I've never known you to be someone that ever turned down an ounce. But anyway, it's one of those things that, I mean, it's really cool too, like you're talking about with the heirloom corn, because, kind of with that project and us kind of being a little bit behind the scenes and kind of knowing how that's coming along is also really cool, because for the people that have tried Baby Jane, and if you haven't had it, it is absolutely amazing. And it was something for me that I wouldn't expect that out of such a young whiskey, so it's going to be real exciting to kind of see how we, keep killing it.
What's your favorite like fall cocktail to make with one of the Widow Janes?
Oh, it's easy. It's either the Decadence, which I have here, where it's either the 10, or it's either one of the ryes, honestly, by itself. I think one of the cool things about our whiskeys is that you can taste through all of them, and they're all going to give you something different. And like for me, like the the Applewood, like you get Applewood. Like this is one of the first whiskeys that I've ever tasted that I genuinely get apple. And it's not something that I feel has been added to it. It's just because of the staves, and it's really cool. So, I mean, for me, that would probably be my go-to. Is that sit back, get some of that nice little apple. Be in there.
Hi, Lisa. Waiting for her audio to connect.
That's quite the room. That's the blending table, I think, in the background.
Yeah. She is sitting in the magical land of magic land right there.
It's very carefully curated. I had to do a legislative thing for New York State Distillers Guild today, and I realized I had cheap vodka behind me, and I had stuff like this.
Making vodka sauce.
It's COVID sanitation.
Oh,
Word.
that's, yeah. I mean, nothing. What else is better than
Feels
that?
like we don't drink that shit.
Hey, clean hands, man.
Yeah, I got mask, red face mask. Yeah, I'm being harassed. Yeah, staff harassment. I deserve it.
So it sounds like they're thankful to be back.
Well, I think so, but we have just been slammed, so yeah. And the whole COVID thing picking back up in New York, it's a little unsettling. We're doing it. We're getting it done. Yeah.
So as we're coming in,
I don't have any clean clothes when I'm not wearing black, too. I have no clean clothes. No clean clothes. No, yeah.
So just for our folks at home, I'm going to reintroduce you as you've come into our room. This is Lisa Wicker. She is our head distiller. I know you don't love the term master distiller, so we're a head distiller at Widow Jane, in charge of all distilling, blending, and delicious things coming out of our amazing Widow Jane. Welcome to our Whiskey Wednesday.
Oh, I'm so happy to see all of you. It's this, now this seems like normal, right? So, so like, oh, good. It's nice to be with you guys again. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have to wait once a year just to see it.
Yeah.
That's you got some stuff going on back there behind you.
We've got lots of stuff going on. Yeah.
Yep.
Some of that's, rye whiskey that I ran at Castle and Key, all kinds of stuff, all kinds of good stuff. If you guys could come in person, we could taste through all this stuff,
Well, I'm gonna get on the plane as soon as I can. Just y'all got to do something about that COVID stuff you got going on out there, and then I will hop on over and come and drink all of it.
Wear your work clothes and some boots. That's all I'm gonna say.
Oh, that's easy. Can do.
Yes, you'll get sucked right in. Like, here, do this.
Well, I mean, I don't think any of us would complain at the opportunity for one to see everyone and two to get our hands dirty again, because it's been such a while before I think any of us have really truly been in our element. So I wanted to ask you, how does it feel being back in the distillery, getting a chance to see the team, getting a chance to kind of almost get back to normal, so to speak?
Yeah, it's oddly emotional. When you realize everybody around you, is hoping for some sort of normal. Obviously, we're not 100% normal, or I wouldn't be downstairs here where chocolate used to be. We got all of our desks socially distanced and everything. But yeah, under the circumstances, being able to open the door every morning and walk through, walk in is tremendously helpful. And, I think we're all grateful for being able to work together again. But it's just everything's just so crazy. I'm, I've got a strong grasp of the obvious, right?
Yeah. So you just dropped a really great line that I hope that if we ever open a nightclub together or you do a Widow Jane release, it will be downstairs where chocolate used to be. I won't get that on my album. That's going to be on our LP. It has to be our #1 hit. Downstairs where chocolate used to be. That just got a ring to it. I don't know.
I'll be your #1 fan. Yeah.
Oh no, you the lead singer. you sing in the band. No, you in the band now.
I can write some I bet I can write some. Yeah, I'm trying to turn it to cuss again. I bet I can help you write some lyrics. Let's just say that.
Boom, we in there.
Yeah.
We are in there.
Yeah, stress relief is cussing like a sailor, right?
Well, you can't get fired, so technically you can say whatever you want. I don't think anyone can say anything.
I can get
Feel
fired.
free to let loose.
Yeah, I've got myself fired before. I can do it.
It's just a little language. It ain't nothing big.
Yeah.
So are you Lisa, are you in the midst of blending up some wonderful whiskey right now? And if so, can you? I don't know if we talked about this on the last time we were on our show, but like getting prepared to starting your blending process and maybe the psych up that you go through. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that, or
Yeah, the blending process backs up all the way to the barrels that we purchased, what we have in stock out of state. And as we're starting to, the program's starting to come together, I think we're on I think I blended my 260. I've done 10 batches of tenure in the last couple of days. I think we're maybe to batch 270 something. It's something crazy. We're way up there. And, so we've started to fall into some patterns. We know which flavors are good approximately. We all know that 2 barrels from the same lot sitting next to each other in a rick house can have completely different personalities. But as we start to draw barrels down, we know where the trends are on proofing trends, flavor trends, that sort of thing. And so instead of just saying, okay, it'd be easy for us just to let's clear out this corner of this rick house, we'll sit down and Jillian and I'll try to figure out, where they need to come from next to try to keep it balanced. So we don't get to the end too with a whole bunch of mismatched barrels, right? I mean, there's no end, right? It's never going to end. But yeah, so that's where the process starts, everything from how much room do we have left in our bonded area in the warehouse? How many barrels can we bring in? At this age, there's some casualties sometimes with the barrels. So you think you might have so many, and then, you set one aside off the truck because it's empty, right? And, so that part of it is, we have sort of a rhythm to it now, but there's definitely things that will pick up and drop off, and we have to consider going forward. Barrel inventory discussion is almost daily about what we're doing, what we're thinking about. I'm trying to catch up right now on what else do we have out there? What kind of potential do we have for other new products? What kind of potential do we have for products we've already established? And, are we going to do that? Are we going to think about something new? And so, Juan and Robert have some amazing ideas, right? And so when they come and say, we can do this, or we'd like you to do this, and you're like, okay, well, maybe we can tap into, some of these things that we haven't used before. I had one of those fun conversations yesterday, actually. So that's the first part of the process. The second part, is Duncan receiving the barrels. It's all hands on deck when the barrels come in. I mean, we are hands on here. So anybody that wants to say there's no craft in blending whiskey, put your jeans and your boots on it, and we'll show you. But yeah, so it's all hands on deck. We all grab our gloves and know to dress down on barrel day and roll all those barrels into the warehouse. And then of course Duncan organizes them. He starts pulling samples. He and Jillian and I have this conversation about what's on deck, and he'll pull them in. Is my great front line. So he'll say to me, these things are low volume, so I immediately know that they're going to, have to represent those a little bit different in the blend, or this is happening with this one, or this is happening with that, or this one's crazy good or crazy bad, right? And so it's nice to have him kind of divide my samples out like that, and then you sit down and you start putting them together. It says my internet connection is unstable. It might be me.
You sound very clear. So I think
it may be me right now. So we bring that in, and I've described this before. Like you start and you think, okay, I'm going to do work on these 3-5 batches right now, and you start and you're like, okay, this first batch came together really well. Because the first one is like chess pieces you can pull out of the box. It's like all the best chocolates out of the box first, right? I'm going to take this one and this one, and of course we can all put this fabulous blend together, and then you get left over with the ones that you poke the hole in the bottom, but you don't ever really want to eat, And so in order to keep that balance, I remind myself that I have to, kind of not put all my favorites together in the front. I have to, kind of batch those out. And interestingly enough, when you do that, it tends to draw out notes too, better notes out of some of the other batches. So, at first you're like, okay, I don't want to do that. I just don't want to use those barrels. And then you realize, oh, wow, that stinker from this batch may actually enhance some notes that you're looking for in another batch. So yeah, it's crazy. And every once in a while, I set one aside the day. It surprised me. It's a low volume, so the color's almost, it's like the dark walnut molasses color. And I'm thinking, that's going to be really tannic and thick. And it was delicious. It was not like anything I'd ever tasted before. And so I happily put that into one of, and then later I thought, maybe I should have set that one aside. It was really interesting. So yeah, it's not an exact science, right? So I've learned, how many milliliters will represent a particular barrel. Like if I know it's an Indiana barrel, Kentucky, Tennessee, that when I'm blending with my trusty graduated cylinder, I travel with a plastic one and I keep the fast one on my desk. You never know where you're gonna have to blend, right? And so anyway, I know what a low volume Indiana is going to represent. I know, and that's just been because we blended so many batches of it. I don't have to, I have to write it down anymore. It's kind of coming automatically now.
You mentioned favorite barrels and not putting them all together, and I think that makes a lot of sense. But you last year, and I think this year again, will release the vaults and some special things that come out, particularly near the holidays. Can you talk about what goes into picking your favorite or the appropriate barrels for those special blends and what we can look forward to coming up this holiday season?
Yeah, that's one of those exercises too, because you'll pull these barrels and you think, well, this is what I really want. And then, sometimes I get hung up on it and I can't make it work. And then finally, you just like, okay, I have to throw the thing on and start all over again. And then you still want to use those barrels. Like, I still want to use these barrels in the blend, and they're not, maybe because they're standouts on their own, but they won't work in the blend. And so finally I have to say, okay, fine. I had to set those aside and go back to the base blend. So yeah, vaults was last year, right? 14. Look at this snazzy label on the 15-year.
Oh, cool.
Yes. I got ready to sit down and do this with you guys. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't even have a Vaults 15 around here. So it's like everyone that can help me is not here right now. So I don't even know where they are. Yeah. So anyway, but the Vaults 15 label looks almost identical to this, obviously, with the information change on it. I mean, Michelle just outdid herself on this last year, right? It's so spectacular that it's not much to improve on there. But.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Well, if there happens to be any more of the first editions floating around, I think I might have. I don't have too much left. I'll definitely come and pick one up. But I wanted to talk.
There's not. You know what? I'm guarding this. Let's just say a particular member of our finance team knows how many bottles I'm sitting on. It's not very many, but I remind them that I have to have this to taste against when I'm blending the next one. Like, yeah, but that's X amount of dollars. So like, yeah, but I'm gonna come wrestle me for because I have to have these, right? I'm not just sitting around drinking them. I'm research and development, right? Yeah.
So we're talking vaults. So what I want to ask is that will there be a rye edition? Maybe coming soon, like a vaults, but in the rye form?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
That's
Great question.
Yeah, let's get back to the vaults. Okay, so vaults, we had, we've got the different woods going on, right? We had the 8-year-olds air season for the 14, and then this one actually is, we did some finishing in Appalachian oak. So it's actually from a specific region, Eastern Kentucky, Eastern Tennessee. The cooperage that I like to use, that cooperage has, different piles of stuff out on the lot. And it's like, what have you got now, And so they sent me some samples and are getting ready to send me some more, some really interesting things. And so this one got, like I said, the last one was 8-year-old air season. This one's Appalachian wood. So we'll probably continue down that bent for a while, because it's fun. And it's interesting what these different woods come up with, but this Appalachian wood is really delicious. It's so good. It's really good.
So these are all being, this is the same coopers that you got from the 14, right? Correct?
Yes. We may branch out one of these days, but they have so many interesting things, on the lot there. And so much of it has so much age on it. And,
right.
That's the hang up for me right now. These older whiskeys seem to lend themselves, if we're going to do any kind of barrel finish on them, they already have so much going on in them and especially, as the tannins start to climb, right? The older it gets, the more tannic it is. I don't want any wood with any tannins. So I need some, a few more seasons on that wood to make sure we don't have any competing tannin in it, or a tannin that'll complement it and not or what am I trying to say? Like the tannins already existing, like trigger it and make it even more substantial, right? Crazy.
So can we talk a little bit about water?
Yeah, we can always talk about water.
Always. I mean, it's amazing. And, just the other day, whenever we were talking, the mouthfeel that you get from that water is insane. And it really is what hooked me on Widow Jane. And the fact that it had some amazing flavor profiles that it's one of those that kind of spoke out. But the process to going and using this water, is it like super intricate? I know there's proprietary things, but we're getting it from the Widow Jane mines up there. And can you talk a little bit about that? Sorry, my brain is just like, whee!
Yeah, the water piece, it's one of those, early on, the love-hate relationship with it, right? Because it causes some interesting issues in whiskey if it's not handled correctly, and it can trigger flock. It's got a lot of calcium and magnesium and things in it. And but it's so delicious. And one of the things I've been doing when I've been on tastings is encouraging people to take a premium European mineral water that maybe in a green bottle and let it go flat, and then just pick any cask strength whiskey. Take a cask strength whiskey and cut that with that flat mineral water versus distilled water from the grocery store, or reverse osmosis water if you just happen to have that hanging around, right? And don't use another minerally enhanced water, because the experiment won't work as well. And then cut your whiskey with it. You'll be surprised what notes that mineral water will trigger in those whiskeys as opposed to regular distilled water. It's pretty amazing. It's for us. It certainly is what creates the Widow Jane profile, because people are like, oh, this definitely tastes like a Widow Jane whiskey. And that's because of the water. The water likes to enhance those cherry notes, the dark stone fruit, the dark plum, dark cherry notes that we get sometimes, or most of the time, and the baking spices. And without it, sometimes the whiskey can be just a little bit flat compared to, it's still really good. So if we were here and we were proofing with distilled water, we think we still had a decent whiskey, but the mineral water, it's just spectacular, right? It just makes some really delicious drinking. I like what it does with the mouthfeel, and it actually enhanced the color a little bit, even though it's crystal clear. And there's you talk about the proprietary part. Just being ahead of ingredient potential, TTB keeps threatening ingredient labeling and things. So, we definitely have everything in place. If we had to start doing that tomorrow, we're good to go on that. We made sure. One of the projects that I started on when I started with Widow Jane was the water issues, right? And and we've been able to see that through and have a very consistent way of withdrawing the water and getting it delivered. And we're on a schedule now. It's great when we get to a point where Jillian actually, you can send it out on the calendar exactly when our water deliveries, and it hasn't been that way. And so, I'm really proud of that program. And the Widow Jane mine is actually with the Snyder property, the Century House historic property there, and people can go visit the Widow Jane mine. You can actually walk in there. So Widow Jane, the name comes from the area, it comes from the Rosendale area. It's part of the folklore there, but technically we withdraw from another mine on the back side. Widow Jane mine comes in this side of the hill, and then we back up like this. Seeing the geological drawings on it's pretty fascinating. And we're under lock and key, right? We got to worry about whiskey quality and water purity and all that sort of stuff. So, we're under metal door lock and key. Yeah.
That's kind of interesting. You said that the water adds to the color. Do you think that's because of the mineral content is somehow reacting with the other molecules and just kind of deepening those colors and flavors? I'm not a scientist. I'm more like a janitor in this sense. So.
Well, that's my first job, first part of my job too. So
Yeah.
5% janitor and 15% all the other stuff. Yeah, it does. And you know, I did a program recently with Liz Rhodes, right? You know, and she's all over the science of all of it. And I actually asked her, because I told her, you know, about it enhancing the notes, the flavor notes, and she said it's definitely probably a pH thing that's doing that. So I'd have to assume that's carrying over to the color as well.
Interesting.
Yeah. pH is crazy on this, right? You know, we think about regular water, just regular water being, you know, in the 7-ish area, and this stuff will knock up to 8 sometimes.
So as I look to keep the goodwill hunting, I wanted to ask, we were talking projects, and we were talking about the heirloom corn project and Baby Jane. Can you talk about Baby Jane a little bit and about the heirloom corn stuff that we have going on?
Yeah, you know, the Baby Jane corn project, the whiskey just keeps getting, you know, the new distillate just keeps getting better. You know, Sienna and I had a conversation recently about, you know, she's got such a good grasp of what she's doing now, you know, about being able to tweak it just a little bit more. And so as, you know, as her experience continues, and, you know, first you do something, you do write a protocol so it's ridiculously solid that it hits all the notes that you want to hit, you know, with the flavor and all that sort of stuff. And now the fun part, you know, you've got all the basics down and everything, and now you can start tweaking it, you know, whether it's cuts or temperatures or that sort of things. And so, you know, it's always about continual improvement, right? And the stuff is so delicious. I mean, it comes off you've tasted it, comes off the still, and it tasted like melted sugar cubes, you know, it's crazy. And the same thing, you know, with what we're running in Kentucky as well. You know, we've learned to work with that staff. They understand now, you know, how different what I do with heirloom corn is. You know, I don't have to continually remind them that, you know, this is going to have to happen at a different stage than what you're used to. And, you know, so we've got a great working relationship there, and that great working relationship translates into better whiskey. So, you know, I don't have any uh-ohs or any, yeah, you know, maybe the temperature got a little too warm this time. It's okay. You know, we'll worry about the, you know, because we can make some of the adjustments to the low wines and high wines. We're going to take those off. But, you know, you hit that part, that sweet part too, with their equipment, with their new old equipment, their equipment and the staff and the temperatures, and the same thing here, right? And yeah, whiskey just keeps getting better. But the heirloom, the Baby Jane corn, it just doesn't. I mean, I just don't even know another corn, you know, that compares to it. I love Bloody Butcher whiskey. I think it makes fabulous whiskey, but we're just a little bit softer and sweeter than that. It's great.
It's super tasty. I'm excited to try the new distillates for sure when we get a chance to.
Yeah, but some of that's here. I won't move that. I'll move it. I'll just keep it in a box and just stuff it under my desk.
Coming from distilling, you know, Yellow Dent and then heirloom, what are some really like distinct differences in the distillation that you look out for when you're doing an heirloom distillation?
The fermentation is really the most, for me, like the most important part. I don't cook it as hot, because when you cook heirloom corn's really hot, they tend to throw a lot of corn oil, and you'll see that I'm sitting on top of fermenter. But the problem with that corn oil is it burns in the still. So if you don't cook it as hot, it doesn't throw as nearly the amount of corn oil, and then you are able to eliminate a lot of those burnt popcorn oil notes in it. So, you know, that's important. I always talk about the difference between we love Yellow Dent whiskey, right? We all have our favorite Yellow Dent bourbons, right? But the supporting grains, you know, it's interesting because I pulled an old textbook of mine out, and, you know, it was just talking about that. It's like, you know, it's so important to pick your supporting grains, because that's what's going to flavor your whiskey. And I say this all the time. It's just so funny to open the book over the weekend and like, oh yeah. Because, you know, Yellow Dent is a little bit of a blank slate. You know, we know what it tastes like, right? And so that's the reason we always talk about, is it a wheated bourbon, high rye bourbon? Because it's so important to know that with the heirloom corn is the flavor you're looking for. The supporting grains, you don't want to compete with those. You know, you've got these beautiful, delicate, sweet flavors, and you don't want to throw a bunch of regular rye at it and get some kind of green grassy note trying to compete with all of that, right? You're going to end up this big herbaceous bomb. And so you know, the balance for us is malted rye and malted barley, and that malted rye so interesting how different it is from regular rye, because that malting process just makes it, and that enhances like the sweet cream note that we get in the distillate. It's really delicious. It's really good. And people say, what is that? You know, like the guy, I just even remember at Castle and Key, the guys are like, I can't believe this makes this much of a difference. And, you know, and bringing out what we want in that corn and those corn distillates. I know you've all heard me talk about, you know, my analogy. People are like, you know, well, so heirloom corn, why go to all this trouble and expense? And I always give the heirloom tomato analogy, right? You know, we all love hothouse tomatoes. We all love, you know, the ones we buy at the grocery store. They serve their purpose. They taste delicious. But then you grow or, you know, buy these heirloom tomatoes that are all these different colors and all these different like a grape varietal, right? All these different personalities, and they don't taste the same. You can, you know, slice 3 different varieties and put them next to each other on a plate, and they don't taste alike. And so it's the same thing with heirloom corn. You know, it you know, still has all of its personality and varietal characteristics.
That's, yeah, super interesting. Can we talk a little bit about the ryes and maybe your process of how you go through choosing those as well? Because that applewood is phenomenal, you know, and like, just like, you know, Mo said, it's that you don't expect that apple to be where it is. And it's just like, it just, for me, it's like, just knocks it out. And that's the reason, is that it's not super like toasty, but it has enough toast and it has that apple. It's like apple pie, really.
Yeah, you know, you've heard all of this, and you know, I hear this over and over. It tastes like baked apple. You know, we get baked apples and you know, all kinds, but generally cooked apples of some sort. You know, you know, apple similar to apple jack in a way, similar to, you know, different apple brandies and things like that. Yeah, you know, that's a sourced rye. We blend that. We add the staves and then we blend it. It used to be vatted, and I shifted, you know, my control freak ways, right? And so I shifted to 5 barrels at a time, because the same thing, I can get, you know, I can keep it balanced. You know, just like everything else, some of those barrels are over extract, some of them not quite where you want them. And so, you know, being able to combine them 5 barrels at a time, we're able to work through some of the, you know, the balance issues on it, right? I think the other thing that works is because our base is such a sweet, easy to drink rye. And so I think it's a really good marriage with applewood. I think if we had, you know, one of those big green grassy spicy ryes, the apple would be lost, or I think it would come across bitter, maybe, you know. But I don't know that would work with, you know, one of those very rye forward ryes necessarily. So same with our applewood, or I mean our American oak, same thing. You know, it's such a soft, sweet rye. I'm always so surprised, you know, when you encourage people like, I don't like rye. I'm like, I know I'm standing here in front of you, but you please just do me a favor and, you know, and taste this. And, you know, so often people are like, oh my gosh, I would have not even known this was rye whiskey, because I really just don't like rye. Or this is the best rye whiskey. This has rye characteristics, but it's not over the top, right? It's so soft and sweet. I discovered this last summer too, some notes I didn't even know were in there. You know, you pour that American oak over ice, and it's almost got like a lemon lime kind of like citrus thing going on in it, you know? But yeah, it's fun stuff.
Yeah, the applewood for me reminds me of like, if you were to, and kind of follow me here, if you were to have like sweet corn butter, and you had like Granny Smith apples that were like a little soft, and you made like a little sandwich out of that with like some wheat bread. I mean, it's just like, it's like a slice of heaven. I just really enjoy it. It's but one of the things I wanted to ask you was for the people at home that may not know, because you had talked about malted rye. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about the malting process and what that is? Because, you know, we have rye and malted rye. Could you give us a little inside scoop?
Yeah, because I'm the queen of analogies. Malted milk balls. The middle of your malted milk ball or your malted milk powder, that is barley malt. And so people are always so surprised to find that out, right? Like even the malt, like, you know, you go to these distiller show things, you know, and so the malt vendors will be there, and like one of them is famous for having malted milk balls made out of their malt stuffed underneath the, you know, and you got to sweet talk them to get your little bag of malt glucose. But yeah, so the malting process is basically, in a nutshell, getting the grain moist, right? Managing it, turning it over until it sprouts. And then it's drying it, whether, in Scotland, we all know the peat monsters that they've dried, they've dried with peat smoke. But that drying process also will add some flavor to it as well. But that will stop that germination process, and it changes the characteristics of the flavors of those grains dramatically. It's done for the enzyme action, right? It's done so that you can help make those conversions from your starches to your sugars, but it's also such a huge flavor component, and in controlling malts, and when you hear malted grain too, it's not always barley. You can malt, like I was talking about, malted rye, you can malt corn, and all of those will bring a whole different perspective to the table as opposed to the grain before it's malted.
Awesome, because that was going to be my next question, because I watch, which I'm pretty sure most of us have, moonshiners, and they were doing like the malted stuff, so I was like, oh, I know who I'm going to ask about that. So thank you.
I'm not sure you know this about me, but I used to make moonshine for that program.
You made moonshine for that program?
Did.
Now can you talk about that a little bit? That's pretty cool. I really like that show.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I've only watched one episode of it ever. I wouldn't sign the papers to be on TV, so I'm like blurred out in the background. My truck is on, my old truck is on a couple of, yeah, when I moved out of winemaking to distilling with Steve Beam, it was one of the first projects there, because they had all this client work, and they decided they were going to shoot some episodes of the Moonshiners. Here's the deal. Steve called me about it, and I talked him into it, not knowing I was going to go to work for him and that I was going to have to deal with it day to day. Like, karma, right? And so, yeah, so we did a peach brandy, which was actually delicious. And not in agreement, but they decided it wasn't peach enough, because it was like real peach brandy, right? So it didn't taste like artificial peach, and they wanted to over flavor that. And, so there was definitely some differences of opinion there. And, but yeah, I managed we were producing that for that program for the first couple of years that I was at Limestone Branch.
So not only are you like a superstar, like distiller, but like you're superstar TV star behind the scenes that no one knew about.
Hillbilly behind the scenes redneck superstar. Yeah.
That is not a bad thing to be. I mean, superstar at the end of most things is great. So I mean, I think you're still winning.
That's literally tongue in cheek, right? Not gonna, yeah, it's making me uncomfortable. I'm starting to blush, right? Yeah.
Speaking of superstars, I just wanted to give it. We've seen in distilling a ton of efforts lately to diversify staffs and things like that. And one of the coolest things I think about Widow Jane is that you already have in place a super diverse, super amazing staff. Just give you a chance to talk a little bit about them, give them a little shout out to the process if you wanted to.
Yeah, it happened organically. I inherited part of the staff here, right? And then we've hired from there. But, I always say, let's hire the best man for the job. If that man happens, to be a woman, that, so be it, right? Or, it doesn't, not, you have to be able, this, you have to be able to get this business, and you talk to someone, and even if they don't know it yet, if there's that spark of enthusiasm, or let's give this a try, and they're coming at it realistically and stuff, it always turns out to be a good fit. And we forget, we kind of joke, we've joked a couple times, Jillian and Michelle and I, that we're a woman-run company. It's like, oh yeah, this and I got off a phone call that Jillian and I were on, and it was with another company that we work with, and it was all women on that call. And I said, we got off, and I said, we may have just made history. I don't know the level of conversation that we had with all women on the phone, and some of them engineers and some of them distillers, and that this has happened before in this industry. I hope so. Maybe not. Maybe we didn't make any history that day, but it's we don't all have the same hair color. Yeah.
I think if you feel it, then
we're not all the same sex, and we don't all have the same hair color. Yeah. Yeah, but it happened, like you said, it happened organically, and that's the one thing here. It's so nice that so many people bring so much, so many different things to the table, it's, everything from the culture of Brooklyn to the culture of New York City to, the culture of the countries that their families, immigrated from. We're just, yeah, it's lovely.
Awesome. So you've been talking a little bit about brandy, and it started making me think. Do you think you'll ever make a wonderful brandy up there at the distillery, or is that also end of this question?
I have no idea. That, if two men that we both know and love, pick up the phone and call me to say, hey, make some brandy, I'm going to do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
But maybe not, we're still making brandy at Mount Vernon,
Yeah.
on that project. And so I still get to be able to mess with that a little bit. And yeah, it's all good. It's all good. But I don't know. I never say never, never say never with this project.
So one of the cool things about Widow Jane is that for people that haven't been in the distillery, you guys do a lot with not a lot of space. Can you talk about
not
some
a lot
of those?
Staff, not a lot of space.
Yeah.
Not a lot of running water, not a lot of heat, not a lot of air, no air conditioning, no heat, no.
And to speak to all those things though, and to still be able to produce such a good juice and make such an amazing product, can you talk about some of the challenges, which I think you've mentioned, but also too some of the cool things that I can think kind of happen in a space like that when you're so kind of small group, closely knit, working in a small space?
Yeah, I mean, COVID's definitely showing this. We got a pretty resilient team, right? And Duncan's worked for the big guys. He knows that normally you'd be washing a tank indoors, right? And everyone even in the office just wears their long johns and puts their down coats on as their shirt all day, and it's a pleasure to work with a group like that. We just, I can't say that we have any hardships here. We just have different logistics, and I've spoken about this before. My mentor said, you're not really a master distiller until you can deal with the oh shits, and this space allows for a lot of those. When you're mashing on one floor, I showed somebody recently, it's like, okay, to go, to mash, we have to go out the door and around the block, and then we come back and across the chicken yard. They don't have any chickens in anymore. And then, and then the still's up here, and then the fermenters are downstairs, and they're like, look at this guy's face. He's a distiller. He's just looking at me like, oh, like, but we get it done, so that's the most important part, and it's part of its Widow Jane's charm, I think that the building is so remarkable, and we can definitely see the change of the seasons through the windows, which is not always the case in the city, right? And yeah, it's all good. It's all good. And, that's like you said, it's the thing that kind of endears you to a space and a team, is that everyone's rolling up their sleeves and getting done what they need to get done.
You mentioned a mentor. Can you talk a little bit about mentors and inspirations you've had along the way to getting here?
Yeah, I've just been really fortunate. We all had the bumps in the road, right? Everyone knows I've got 3 grown children that, hung the moon as far as I'm concerned, but they, you teach when you're growing up, and you have to teach them that there's not light without dark, and there's not the yin without the yang, kind of stuff. But on the positive side of things, that's the only thing you need to think about, get through that stuff, and you don't need to think about that stuff anymore. You just need to think about the good stuff. But I got lucky early on, and Ellie Butz, she was a retired Purdue professor from the enology program there. That's, they were trying to set something up for non-West Coast wineries, right, in the central part of the country, and Purdue's got such a great agricultural reputation, and so they have a pretty remarkable program there. Cornell's for the East, right? It's Mary, right? And, UC Davis, you think about in the West, and I, did a little bit of schoolwork there, and then in the central part of the country, Purdue's come on strong. And so anyway, Ellie, I met her early on, and she was always available. And so, my first boss, I have to kind of look at, he really took me under his wing, and let me off the leash often enough that, you know, I was able to figure out things and how things to work. He was an incredibly intelligent man. And then, you know, I had Ellie at the end of the phone, and then when I moved into distilling in Kentucky, I met Dave Sherrick. I actually ended up judging ACSA when nobody knew who I was in the distilling world, because I'd been working with Steve Beam, and there was a terrible snowstorm, and they're like, all these people can't get into Louisville for this judging. And Steve, you know, asked Steve if he could come. He said, yeah, and I'll bring Lisa. You know, I think she'll do okay. And I met Dave Sherrick at that judging, and I got lucky, and we had a great conversation. And you know, what I guess what my thought process was at the time. He saw something in me, and has been incredibly generous with, you know, he's always at the other end of the phone. Sometimes, you know, to talk me off the ledge, sometimes to say, what are you thinking? Maybe you should go at this another way. So he comes up here because he's in his mid 70s, he's still working. And he's in New York for one of his projects. Like, you know, we planned on having dinner, and he came by Widow Jane. And so I wanted to show him everything, you know, I accomplished so far, and talk about, you know, this is humble pie, right? And he's like, okay. And he's like, but what are you going to do about that? What are you going to do about can, like, 5 seconds, can we, like, you know, look at what I've done already? But that keeps me honest, right? You know, and
always moving the goalpost.
Always moving the goalpost, and thank goodness he did, right? I mean, there were days that I thought, I'm just not, I don't know if I'm going to, you know, this is quite the challenge today. And you know, I'll come and he'll say, well, because he's seen it all, right? And he's like, well, I've never been exactly in that situation, but when I had this situation at Seagram's or at Woodford Reserve, or, you know, I had, you know, this is what we thought through. I know these aren't identical situations, but, you know, it helps trigger that thought process where you're trying to, you know, figure out what it is that you need to uncomplicate at the moment. Yeah, so I've been really lucky over the years, you know. I mean, I started out, you know, working in a biology lab because, you know, I had a journalism degree, and scientists, you know, I'm old enough that it was pre-PC, right? And I, not political correctness, you know, personal computer. And so I did their technical writing for them. You know, I was like the spell check, right? And so I started doing that in photography and things like that, knowing I should have probably studied the sciences. But the interesting thing is I had, you know, the chairman of the department, and, you know, he saw something in me as well and really challenged me, and actually, you know, end up working in that lab, even though I didn't have a science background. And, you know, so I've been really fortunate over the years that people have been generous and opened doors that you just have to put in the work. They open the door, and, you know, you put in the work, and it all comes together.
Right on. So this is probably going to be the biggest question of the day.
Uh-oh.
Did you go fishing this weekend, and what did you catch?
I did not. I worked all weekend.
Oh, bummer. I was about to live vicariously through you because I didn't go either. So
Okay. Yeah, going to, you know, vaults, you know, I've been here the last 3 weekends. So no complaints, you know, it's a lifestyle, right? But that's funny because there was a New York distiller from Roscoe that you know, that's where I like to go fish. And he asked, when you're coming up? I said, probably next weekend. So not this coming weekend, but the weekend after next. It's also my favorite weather. I like it when it starts getting chilly.
Oh yeah, that's the best.
Yeah, you know, trout like it too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We're gonna have to go fly fishing. You know, I'm terrible at it. Obviously, you're amazing.
Oh, so no, I'm terrible. I'm the worst.
Hey, I'll tell you this: every time I go fishing, I catch something, even if it's a buzz. So
we'll do just fine together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got skunked by, you know, my youngest daughter. I tried to get her the whole time she's growing up. We lived on this little lake to, you know, I keep my fly rod rigged in the kitchen, right? And I tried to get her to fish with me all these years, right? And she just, no, thanks, Mom. I'm not going to, you know, and I'm like, oh, come on with me. And so, you know, I taught her then boyfriend, now husband, you know, how to fly fish, and he took it up. Now she fishes with him. It's like all the years I tried to get, I was like,
it's just not cool whenever we do it with them. When they're like, oh, my friend said it was cool, so I'm going with them.
Yeah.
Neat.
Yeah. Oh well, I tried. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
since we're
they fish in Tennessee, and she, you know, she caught 5 trout last week. 5 rainbows. Yeah.
Nice. So what's the biggest fish you've ever caught? And secondly, what are you listening to on the radio right now? Like, what's your jam?
Oh my gosh. Biggest fish I ever caught. Saltwater. Very small shark. And then another time a barracuda. Barracuda was probably the largest thing
Wow.
I ever caught.
That's scary catching a barracuda because they got some serious teeth. And,
They have some
you know,
serious teeth, and I'll be quite honest. I was a teenager, and my family, we'd go down to the Florida Keys back when the Florida Keys had not been discovered. Right, they're pretty rustic, and we go with this other family that had girls, and they would just let. I had two sisters, and they just let the five of us kind of run wild, right? And so out fishing, and I'm sure, and yeah, you catch this thing. It's got so many. It may be one of the only fish I've never taken off the line by myself. Yeah, unfortunately, a gentleman bailed me out and helped me unhook the thing. But yeah.
I wouldn't grab a barracuda. No.
Yeah. So I can't say that I was totally self-sufficient on that fish.
But you caught it. You caught it. You did reel it in. So I mean, you have technically caught us dinner, unlike Chris, who only catches a buzz. So I think you at least got us something.
I'm a big catch and release person too. All these rivers up here too. They're still trying to restock all the trout and everything. So it is hard sometimes. It's like, man, I really wish I could eat this thing tonight, but I can't. So yeah.
Nice.
You just have to catch a buzz. I'll drink instead. Since
That's what I do because I catch and release because I maybe I do or don't have my license while I'm doing this.
You're never supposed to tell on yourself on camera. I don't know if you know this, but I'm going to teach you a little something. Don't tell on yourself where it's recorded on camera. Come on, bro.
Yeah.
You're on mute, Mary.
Well, speaking of a buzz,
something I'm drinking and I'm not. Is that what's going on?
For the holidays, I don't think we got to talk about the decadence, and I think we'll have a little bit more about that. So maybe we should.
Yeah, actually, I did bring I got the second decadence. So yeah, the process was pretty much the same, but because of the way that we blend whiskey and the whiskey blend that went in to the base of this, one of the things that has happened 2 times is the whiskey blend could have stood on its own. I mean, it was good. I mean, Jillian came back. She's like, "Oh my gosh, I almost hate that you're putting this, in maple syrup barrels. This is really good." And Duncan said the same thing. And but tend to blend a little bit lighter whiskeys. I don't mean lighter in like age necessarily, but in they're what am I trying to say? Elegant, more simplistic whiskeys together for the base of this one. And then, we rebarrel it and monitor those barrels, and Duncan rolls them around. And whoever's available, we actually put them in there, and they get rolled until we decide that they're ready to go, and then combine those and blend those out to the end. I'll hold back a barrel or a partial barrel or something like that if the blend's not going to balance. I'm not going to just throw it all in there to vat it, or make sure that it's blended to the very end of that process. So yeah, it's fun. It smells amazing. You come in and it's like, if there's anything better than bourbon, it's bourbon and maple syrup, smelling it all at the same time. But yeah, so it's not sticky sweet. I think, some serious whiskey drinkers have said to me, like, gosh, I really, be quite honest, I was going to open this and think I'm not going to like this because I really just don't like super sweet stuff, and it's balanced enough, that it's still a really approachable whiskey.
I cannot wait to try this. I still haven't.
Oh, you say that, and I feel so guilty every.
No, it's not your fault. It's not your fault.
Every time we talk, I was like, yeah, I haven't had that yet. Haven't had it. Like, I
just can't. I'm waiting. I'm like, come on.
I'm so sorry.
No.
I'm
just take one of your road trips out. Pick up Mary. Come on north.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're out in the West Coast. You're fine. We'll call you and let you. We'll FaceTime you while we're there.
Please don't call me, Chris. Please don't.
Yeah.
So, Lisa, what are you drinking? If you're not drinking Widow Jane or Few or Ocho or Vago, or I mean, it'd be kind of hard to
The
drink
Coke
anything
brand,
else, but
all
like,
of
what's like your go-to cocktail? What are some of the things what's one of your guilty pleasures that, like a mind eraser or something that, you don't.
Oh gosh, because I love whiskey so much. Like a perfectly done standard, right? A perfectly done old fashioned. The higher the proof on the bourbon, the better. A perfectly done Manhattan. There's just no. Yeah, it just showcases the whiskey so well. It showcases the bartender's talents when that it's been perfectly done. I can't mix a cocktail to save my life. I am just impatient. I'll do all this. I'll be so patient with like whiskey, but if I make, especially for myself, I just won't mix anything up, right? Anything that my family, when we get together, there's lots of eating and drinking, and whatever is their latest thing to put together. Those are always, I don't know that they're guilty pleasures, but they're, certainly ridiculously amount of fun, having good company and good food and all of it together. Really, I really should probably come up with a better answer than that, but
It's okay. We'll send you some cocktail recipes that, you can get wild and wicked in the distillery with the team.
the deal.
Do you prefer high rye bourbons whenever you're making your cocktails, or?
It depends on it depends on what it is, I mean, it really, everything has to get matched. Just like, this is parallel but different. It's like people ask about like chill filtration with whiskey. Chill filtration is not a bad thing. Some whiskeys need it. Some whiskeys are oily and heavy and can benefit from having some of that stuff removed, and so it's like everything has its own,
There's
like
a place for everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a ginger ale they only make in Kentucky, and it's like there's nothing wrong with makers in LA. Yeah. Woodford Reserve and ice, that's one of my favorite cocktails, because I can drink it like iced tea, right? You do in the summertime, you just get the big glass and you pour it in ice.
That's a good point.
Pour that on there like it's tea, and then you work on that all afternoon when you're doing something, right? And then, there's but yeah, and going through all their other whiskeys, because there's only so many hours in the day, and I always want to know what everyone else is doing. I don't want to get house palate. I don't want to get to a place where anything that's not Widow Jane doesn't taste right to me. I want to see what other people are doing, what they're bringing to the table, how they're releasing their whiskeys. Everything from trying to decipher what the age statement is if it's not on the label. But and knowing where some of these whiskeys come out of their rick houses and that stuff. So yeah, sometimes I'm always working, but it's good work, so it's okay.
I mean, yeah, you're producing some of the best juice around, as you can see by my my little display here. So I don't think anyone's complaining.
You bottle? No, I don't.
Well, I mean, it's here too. I should have switched the tables. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
So, what was one of your favorite shows growing up? What was something that if you could call a television station right now to have them bring it back on the air, what would it be?
I didn't watch much TV. I was that nerd kid. There has to be something that I absolutely love. Lassie.
There we go. Wholesome television right there.
I could think of, it's the only show I could think of. Gilligan's Island. I did love Gilligan's Island. I loved Gilligan's Island. Yeah.
That's a good call, but I mean, the plot behind that show is just, when you think about it, it's like, huh?
Yeah, that's terrible.
I was that nerd kid that sat there and they're like, I wouldn't have done it like that. Why don't they fix the damn boat, right?
Yeah, like go home already. Like, come on, you've been here for like 8 years. Go home.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I didn't watch much TV growing up. There's always stuff to do, right? I've spoken about my father before, and he raised 3 girls, but he treated us like girls, but he raised us like boys. And so, on summer days, he'd just leave this big pile of wood scraps and hammers and nails and say, then go to her, here, paint this doghouse or build this thing or whatever. And we did, and wanted us to be self-sufficient. He was way ahead of his time. I don't think he thought of it as, like some sort of like, way to raise feminist or something. I think he did it just because he didn't want us to be taken advantage of and wanted us to be self-sufficient. And we weren't allowed to drive the car until we knew how to change the tire and change the oil. It didn't mean we had to do it, but we had to be able to know it and do it before we could ever drive, and so he had we didn't know every little girl wasn't getting quizzed on the tools in the toolbox. He was an engineer. He didn't know every little girl wasn't getting quizzed on the tools in the toolbox, which we actually wrote for part of his eulogy, right? Because he'd still say, hey, you look pretty, honey, kind of thing. But yeah, he just gave us an amazing skill set. Everything, we learned to forage from him, wild asparagus and morel mushrooms and Chris, how to catch fish and clean them, and cook them. And he was one of a kind, my dad. And he raised 3 girls, 2 with very, kind of non-traditional. My sister's was the harbor master of a sailing club with 300 boats in the Midwest for years and years, and is now out and running a boat mechanic firm thing, and so, my youngest sister still renovates homes. She's a teacher, but she also, does a lot of home renovations and stuff herself. So, it paid off. It paid off. That's the reason I can do this job. It's the reason I knew, my early successes were things like getting pumps operating again. And yeah, you had us take small engines back when girls didn't do that, and like, I'm not taking shop class, Dad. And he's like, yeah, you are. Pick one. I don't care which one you pick. You pick small engines or woodworking, whatever, you're going to pick one. Yeah. And now those are all co-ed. At the time I was in school, I'm old enough that when I was in school, they were not. Girls went to home ec and the guys went to shop class. So, and you're a shy girl and you're like, your dad's telling you to go to shop class. At the time, it's like, if I had a different personality, I would have thought I had it made, right? But at the time, it was like, don't make me go in there with all those boys. Yeah.
Well, we are getting to the end of our hour, and we could talk for another one, and I'm sure we'll have you back as this is the second visit. But thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Mo and Chris, as always, for your banter and joining us every week. And thank you again, Lisa.
Yeah, you guys are so much fun. I really, really look forward to this. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah. We love you so much, spirit animal.
Somebody mute Chris.